Hey guys, before we start, a quick shout out to Alpha Dog Nutrition for sponsoring this podcast. Alpha Dog products are now available at dusupply.com, and you can use code ALPHADOG15 at checkout for 15% off and a credit for free shipping to try it yourself. Now let's get you to your podcast.
Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Welcome once again, friends, to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. Hey, it's that busy time of the year, New Year. Wow, empty slate laying before us here, and how will we fill it? That's always the question at this time of year, and I've never been one for New Year's resolutions because I rarely was able to keep them. But anyway, one of the things that I resolved to do in the new year for this podcast is to bring as many interesting folks as I can to the microphone. I know that sometimes you guys probably get tired of listening to me bat my gums here every week, but today is a great way to start this thing off. I think this will be our first podcast in the new year, and I reached out to a longtime friend. He and I go back several years, and someone that I've always enjoyed spending time with, and that's my good friend Fred Bright from the great state of Georgia. How are you doing, Fred?
Very well. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you on. I think we had the opportunity to chat a little bit on the phone earlier today, and we're recording this on a Saturday, which is something I don't normally do, but I guess you had a basketball game today.
Yes, I did. Got grandchildren playing ball, and we try to make every game we can.
Well, I remember my days back in Kalamazoo when my son was growing up, and he started in about the 6th grade, I think, playing basketball. And he's taller than his dad, and he went to a small school, and he used to laugh and said, "Well, the only reason they picked me, Dad, is because I was the tallest kid in the school." But now he really enjoyed it, and we traveled every Tuesday night and Friday night all through his high school years, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that.
Yes, that's the highlight. I think following those grandchildren, and going to the games and seeing them play. I think I had 3 children, and coming from Indiana initially, I was born and was there till I was 20 years old. Indiana's basketball. That's what we've done. Basketball's been the main sport that they've all played. All 3 children played. Now I have grandchildren. Got one granddaughter, and she's a junior at Georgia College in Milledgeville playing basketball. She got a full ride there, fortunately.
Awesome.
And, it's only an hour away, and gee, what a pleasure that is to go watch them play.
You know it is. Anything you can do with the grandkids, you know.
You got that right.
Yeah, my son, Christopher, I only have the one child, and he lives on the west side of Chicago, and he and his wife, Teresa, they met at Ann Arbor right after college, and she had gone to an Indiana school, Goshen College.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
Goshen, Indiana.
For sure. She was actually it's an interesting story, and we won't get too deep in the weeds here, but Chris met her. He was working in a coffee shop, and she was working in an art library, gallery right next door. And they were in Ann Arbor, but neither one of them went to the University of Michigan. Chris went to Eastern Michigan University, and he wanted a degree in journalism, and they offered that. So that's where he went to school. And then Teresa's into web design. She can virtually do anything with a computer. And I cannot, so that's interesting. But anyway, I remember he told one of his buddies said, "Hey, that girl over there, I think she kind of would like to go out with you." And he said, "Oh no, I'd have to bring my A game to ask her out." I don't know if I can do that. But Teresa's interesting. Her dad was a Mennonite and was serving over in Greece and met Teresa's mom. And they got married, and Teresa was actually born in Greece. And then he brought them back to Archbold, Ohio, there where Souter Furniture was and all. But anyway, that's enough about me and my family. This is supposed to be about you and yours. When I met you, Fred, I was at UKC, I believe.
When did you start with UKC?
I started actually full time in 1983, but I was a field rep in 1978, and I worked at some of the RQEs and all. But so could you kind of put a date on it, maybe?
Well, I was trying to think. I was thinking back when we met and when I got involved. I used to go up to the Ivan Clark, black and tan breeder. I would go up, and he and I and a gang, Eddie Bartley, Greasy Long, some of those guys. Eddie Bartley was a turkey farmer. And anyway, we would go to Greencastle. We just looked forward to that every year. And I distinctly remember, how they used to line us up on those posts or deep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, just half mile seemed like at 4:00 in the afternoon and hot. And you're not going to get to the woods for a couple. But anyway, they have you go out there and meet. Well, that year, Dr. Furman had brought on, Fred Miller was buying it, and Fred didn't know anything about hounds.
That would have been probably 73.
Okay.
Because that's the year that I met Fred at Plott Days, and he was doing that, making the rounds, meeting everybody.
Just talking to people and, meeting what's a Plott and what's a Walker, and he was at that base. I'll never forget, Dr. Furman came in. I didn't know him. I knew of him, but didn't know him. But he was just walking down the line of all those posts and introducing Fred to different. He said, "Now, here's a Walker dog. Here's an English dog." And of course, I'm standing there with 3 Walker dogs and my black and tan. And he introduced me. He said, "Now, here's a black and tan." Of course, he said the Walker dogs are the most popular, and there's always more of them. And I said, "Well, Mr. Miller, you might want to get these 3 guys' names of the Walker dogs because you won't be reading about them in the magazine next month." Just kidding. You know how we always say, because the Walker dogs are usually winning. So as a result, they get the blood end of all that. And he got a kick out of that. But I just remembered that little incident. And typical, what was that? Super restaurant or donut shop right outside?
Oh, right across the street.
Yes, right across the street.
And why can't I?
Everybody.
Just a minute, I'll tell you the name of it.
Well, I've got to tell you one more incident that happened in Greencastle.
Now let me tell my listeners, in case they don't know or they've been under a rock for the last few years. Greencastle was the home of Autumn Oaks.
Absolutely.
Was the first Autumn Oaks was there in 1960. Then it went to Kentucky and up to Kalamazoo, and then they took it back to Greencastle, and it stayed there for about 20 years, I think. But anyway, go ahead. But there was a restaurant right across the street. That was packed with coon hunters every morning for breakfast that I remember.
Everybody had to go there. And the thing that was so unique about Greencastle that I was fascinated with, living in Tennessee at that time, not East Tennessee, and we had, like you grew up in the mountain country, we had very few coon. I mean, it was a good night if you looked at 1 or 2 coon. and hunted most of the night. But in Greencastle, hundreds of dogs barking. You could take a hound and walk him back of those buildings in some timber, turn loose and tree a coon. Or you could get in your truck and drive a half mile down the road. Nobody seemed to mind that you hunted, that you were trespassing. We didn't know who owned the land. You'd want to look at a dog and you could go back there and turn him loose, see him bark, tree a coon, and go and drive a half a mile back to the grounds. We couldn't get over that. We thought we had died and going to heaven.
Well, that familiarity, I think, was what ultimately led to Greencastle having to be moved to another place, because some of the townspeople, I think, began to complain after a while when people would come and bring their mules and some fences somehow miraculously got cut in the process.
Do you remember Owen Bowman's Bruiser?
I do.
It's actually Eads Black Bruiser.
Yeah, I do.
Well,
I do.
Clark.
Is that the one they also call Foot or something like that?
Called what?
They call him Foots or Foot or something like that.
Not Legs.
Legs. Yeah.
No, that's a different hound.
Different hound. Okay.
Lee Eads did own Leeds. Both of them good hounds. Good hounds.
Lee and his brother Duel, I believe.
Yeah. Duel. There's three brothers, or three of them that I knew.
Yeah.
But anyway, Ivan Clark bought Bruiser from Lee Eads right there at Autumn Oaks for $500. Night champion, solid coon dog, and they walked him on a leash right out behind the buildings. Turned him loose. He treated coon. Ivan said, "I'll take him." And he turned out to be, he's an ancestor of Set 'em Up Ace, Larry DeGroat's Black Art, a lot of the good producing hounds. And the funny thing was, he's one of those that had a tremendous mouth on him, a lockdown tree dog. But you could leave him in a soybean field running all night. Couldn't get him out of it. His pups could run with the wind and catch a coon on the ground, something that he didn't do. He couldn't take a track out very well, move it. But his pups all did, as breeding goes.
Well, that's incredibly interesting. And if you have access to the centennial book that UKC published, 100 Years in the Registry Business, I did an article on Autumn Oaks, and I believe I talked about some of those, not those dogs particularly, but some of those things that you mentioned there, Fred, and tried to remember just what it was like, or what it would be like to be able to assemble those great hounds of history and set them down the creek there, So you at that time were living in Fort Wayne, Indiana, correct?
No, at that time I was living in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh, okay, but you were born in Fort Wayne.
Yes, I was born in Fort Wayne. Started coon hunting with a tenant farmer when I was about 12, 13 years old. He milked cattle, and I would meet him every Friday and Saturday night after he milked. And we would run, never hunted over 2 miles from the house. Didn't have to. Had an old 51 Ford. He'd take the back seat out. That was his family car. Load the hounds in the trunk and go into the back, and they'd be all over the back. And he'd be tired, always so tired, and he would send me carrying a rifle, a lantern, and binder twine for leashes, and send me down a fence road, and he'd drive around the other side and pick me up. And all of the stories I could tell you about the hunts we had. One in particular, I was so tired, the heater hit me in the face in the car. I couldn't hardly keep awake. It was about 1 o'clock. And he sent me down a fence road, and he always called me Freddie. He said, now, Freddie, stay on that fence row. And that come through all the way. Well, the wind was blowing, it was cold, and those hounds went berserk. I was coming up on them and they were treed, but I couldn't see a tree. And I couldn't understand why they were doing so crazy. Now, at this time, you got to realize my dog was a 19-pound mongrel, half Boston Terrier. He was my first tree dog. And he was in on every coon, everything we ever done. But he was in the pack with these big hounds. We had 4 hounds and him. They're going crazy. And I walk up to the fence row, and there's a sapling about 4 inches in diameter with a big coon I can see against the sky before I even get there. The hounds are going berserk. They can see him jumping on the fence. So I set all my gear down, one of those Bill Boatman 7-cell flashlights, that you carried on your back, those big long, got to set the kerosene lantern down, single shot Stevens rifle, set it on the fence. I get, not thinking or knowing any better, I'm going to grab that limb and swing it back and forth and shake him out. So I got him swinging, get way over one way, hounds are running up and down the fence, go berserk. Finally, he flops on the other side of the fence. Well, these big hounds are so excited, they could all clear a fence, a 4.5, 5 foot fence, had hunted in them all their life. But they were so excited, they're hitting the wire and trying to go through that fence instead of jumping over because the kind of coon hit right there in front of them. My little dog was the only one. He weighed 18 pounds that could go through the wire. Excuse me. He jumps through the wire, catches that coon on the ground, grabs him, part bulldog now, grabs him by the cheek and just hangs on. That coon's running with him and dragging him. By then, I throw 2 of the dogs over the fence. They hit, the ground's froze solid. I shine my big light, get it, and trying to see they're getting away from me and out across the fence. I'm trying to throw these big dogs over the fence. And I hear it going, the racket going on over there, and I thought they'd kill my little dog. So I finally get the dogs over. I get over the fence, get out there. Those big dogs would tackle the pack, mine and the coon. And the gist of the story was the reason this was such a fight, as you and I saw one down in South Georgia one night. This was the biggest coon, I believe, he weighed 33 pounds.
Oh, my goodness. That's a bruiser.
That was a big coon for Indiana. I mean, we usually got 18, 20. And back then, they flat skinned them and put them up on the barn.
Yeah.
That was the way they done. And the next morning, 2 or 3 of his friends came over, and Carl, my farmer friend, and they came over, and he always boiled the meat in an old black pot and gave to the hounds. He skinned the coon out flat, and that's when they weighed him and all that next morning, and we realized we had a trophy of a lifetime.
Wow.
I said, no wonder he was able to drag my little dog over that field.
That one that we, and I want to talk about that a little bit, our adventures down there in Georgia during Winter Classic time. But that one that we encountered down there wouldn't have weighed 12 pounds soaking wet.
He wasn't,
and he whipped that Wrangler dog I had. He was a big dog. He was up under Wrangler's belly. He was scratching him from nose to toes.
You remember him biting that Walker dog? He had that Walker dog bleeding
a
stuck hog from underneath.
A raccoon, he doesn't, pound for pound, I guess they're about as scrappy as anything going.
That they are.
We've now got the Humane Society on us, and they'll be caught knocking on my door tomorrow, but we don't care. Things happen, right?
Oh, you got that right. You got that right.
That's a great story, Fred, and that's a whopper of a coon. I lived all those years in Michigan, and I never caught a 30-pound coon the whole time I lived up there. I caught some that were in the upper 20s, but nothing that went that big. So that's
the only other big coon I had. A dog called Hickory I got from Johnson down in Mississippi as a puppy. Just a nice pleasure dog. And but he weighed 83 pounds, big, beautiful dog. Well, we went out, Ivan and a bunch of us went out to Don Egley's in Iowa. And they told us that, well, hey, you're going to see some big coon. Well, Don had us, he climbed up and flipped a coon out one night. There's my big hickory dog, 83 pounds, and a yearling coon that only weighed about 83 pounds. He was chasing the dog. I mean, Hickory couldn't even pin him to the ground. We just laughed.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was a time when, we kind of reveled, or hunters kind of reveled in having a good kill dog and all. But I think hunters have wised up over the years that those vet bills for split ears and poked out eyes and all that kind of stuff is not worth it. And it's better for the game too, because I think today's hunter's much more humane, and they carry a rifle, and it's over quick and all. But boy, there's been some real rodeos, and what comes to mind to me. And did you happen to be at Autumn Oaks the year, or at the World Hunt that we had, the taxidermy display of the mounted coonhounds?
Gee, I don't think so. No, okay. I don't remember that.
Man, we went to Mayfield, Kentucky, the first year that I was full-time with UKC. It was 1983, and that was the World Hunt, the finals. And a taxidermist brought a display out to the fairgrounds. It was 2 dogs treeing on a tree, and a third dog down in the water with a raccoon on his head. And this was what it had won the People's Choice Award at some huge taxidermy show. But that's the first time I ever saw a stuffed dog, and it was weird. You'd see people walk by, and one of the dogs, I think, had been hit by a car, and the other maybe had died of I don't know what. But anyway, and this guy had gotten the idea for this. And so it was so effective, though. So many people commented on it all. I asked the guy to bring it to Autumn Oaks the following year. And I believe it was at Jasper, Indiana, where we had that one. But people would come walking down the aisle and looking at things and looking at the stud dogs and all that. And then they'd see that display, and then they'd just stop dead in their tracks. Some of them even take a step or two backwards, But it was amazingly done. I mean, it was a Walker dog and an English, like a tricolored English dog, and then this black and tan in the water. So, oh boy, there's been a lot of things down through the years that have been unusual. But
a coon hunter just has so many tales to tell when you're, in strange country, out there in the dark, following your dogs. The things that happen are just unreal. When I look back and think of all the interesting hunts, some with the law involved, some with neighbors involved.
Got run out of the woods one night. We were on a night hunt by a lady in her nightgown with her hair all rolled up in curlers in a Volkswagen. She came and drove right up in the middle of our 6 or 8 guys that we had there and told us in no uncertain terms that we were not invited where we were and would we please get out. And that was that. I'll never forget that one. I think that was in Ohio. That sounds like Ohio, doesn't it?
That reminds me of.
I'll get some hate mail.
I was hunting in Georgia, about an hour south of Macon, by myself, and I had been to a tree, but was walking back down a little gravel road. Really, it's her driveway, but it's a county road. And I knew there was a little pond and a house at the end of that driveway, but I'd never met her. And I had some land leased, deer hunting lease around it. So anyway, I'm walking my dog on a leash, and here comes this big Lincoln, real slow, just cruising along, about 10 at night. She's coming back to her house, and she stopped, rolled the window down. I said, good evening, ma'am. I said, I'm coon hunting and just going back to my truck. And I said, my dog sometimes trees down by your house. She said, I live down here at the end of the road. And I said, well, my dog sometimes trees around there. I just didn't want to scare you. I want to let you know who. She said, honey, you couldn't scare me. And she come to find out she had been what do you call them? She had a Nashville suit star that she was the agent for.
Oh,
She in Nashville, and she had sold and bought this little piece of property out in no man's land, and I got a kick out of that. I said, honey, you couldn't scare me. I said, well, I could see that I wouldn't.
Well, it's really refreshing when you do get encounter someone out there, and of course you always fear the worst. Boy, I'm going to get my butt chewed out here, for sure. And then when you find out that it's a rational person that understands, it's like a breath of fresh air. But I've been in those things. I walked around the trailer up in Michigan one night. My dog was treed in this little community-like thing, and the guy was standing there with a shotgun. He didn't have it leveled on me, but he was holding it at quarter arms,
Yes.
I said, sir, I am terribly sorry. That dog, I'm sure, has disturbed your sleep, and I'm just trying to get him and get out of here. He said, well, you're not bothering me, and that was, and I've had them that want you to shoot it out, and then I've wanted, some of them have said bad things about my mother. So
I hear you. I think we've all got caught in that situation one time or another.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Well, how did you get started with this crazy tree dog stuff? Well, no, before we do that, let me back up just a minute. I thought you had an interest. You're retired now, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you had a very
very
interesting career. Tell us a little bit about what you did for a living.
I sold orthopedic equipment to hospitals and doctors all over the Southeast, and started out in sales and went into middle management, went into specialty items, but really enjoyed, work pretty much set your own itinerary. Worked for a company called Zimmer out of Warsaw, Indiana. They're the largest orthopedic company in the world. And we sell hips, knees, joints, and a lot of other medical things, tourniquets, things that go with it in surgery. And I spent, I spend 2-3 days in surgery a week. In the service, I had the opportunity to be in the hospital in an orthopedic clinic and got to go to surgery every day. So it kind of learned that the 2 years I had in the service was a training ground for me.
Awesome.
The good Lord just directed me, but through a friend, just through knowing a friend. And while I was going to school, he wanted me to come down to North Carolina and work for him for the summer. Well, I never went back home. I love this work. Now, so that's how, and in my travels through the Southeast, I would carry my black and tan book with me. And if whatever town I'm in, I'm looking up a black and tan guy. It's I know him. And you've done that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a brother. And I mean, it's addictive.
Well, a fellow Georgian down there, everybody in the Coonhound world knew Paul Sheffield.
Oh,
and he had Plott years ago. And as I would travel to Florida, I'd come back up, I'd make a swing around to Baxley, and call up Paul,
Let me tell you about a hunt with Paul.
All right.
In I believe it was early 70s, I think. I went to look at a Grand Nite champion black and tan, Ray Crowder owned, and in Madisonville, Tennessee. We went to what they called at that time the Great Southern Hunt.
It was in Johnny Brinkley talks about that a lot when I had talked with him.
I just went along and drove that weekend to look at that Grand Nite with my friend, Ray Crowder. In that cast, I'll never forget, Paul Sheffield was hunting Sheffield Jeanette.
Yes.
That little little female, about 40 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Plott
they're
female.
70, yes, a Plott.
Mm-hmm.
And the black and tan weighed 70 pounds. Now, I'll tell you this for a reason. A guy with the blue tick had maybe the biggest coonhound that I've ever seen. He was 6'6". I was later told by somebody said, "Oh yeah, that was so and so." He was 6'6", and I believe they said this hound weighed 120 pounds. He was a blue tick, and he was bred right here in Georgia, either Sandy Creek or Sandy Creek Warrior or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Jeanette I'm talking about cleaning their plow. All three dogs would tree. The big blue dog was so big he couldn't get up on a tree. He'd wrap around it and bawl the way they do. Well, Jeanette's just sitting there every breath. I'll never forget one tree we left. We left there, and Jeanette just fell treed again behind us. Paul said, Stryker and Trier said she's on that same tree. Well, he knew she wasn't. She wouldn't go back to another. Those guys didn't even.
That kept them from tree.
He went back and burned them on that one. That's when it was only 200 for 100 and 100. And I'll never forget that night. We parked on a road, and I was trying to learn to use a compass.
Mm-hmm.
I was this experiment on my hunt, go this way. I had so I had trained myself to use a number, 70, or I'm coming out at 90, whatever. So I got it out on the road and looked at it. We got in there. We got lost. We started going circles. And one of these deals judged, it all looked the same. We're in rough South Georgia country. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, if you guys want to take a chance, I think the truck's that way. Well, nobody knew any different. And these guys were experienced. If they're hunting Grand Nights, they're experienced hunters. Any one of them should have, not a one of them. I had a conversation. We got out to the highway. We missed the truck by several hundred yards, but we still got on the highway. We got back. So, like I say, all these crazy tales and things.
Well, Fred, I'm going to bet that big blue tick belonged to Frank Finley, Dr. Finley from South Carolina, maybe.
The big one?
Uh-huh. Because at one time, later on, he had Plotts too.
Okay.
But he had blue ticks way back there. They called them Jockasee Valley or something.
Yep. I remember those. I took a picture of the three dogs. The thing that was so interesting, in the back of my pickup truck, I said, you guys get up there and hold the dogs. They stood by the pickup. The Plott dog could stand under her head couldn't even touch the bottom of the pickup. The 70-pound black and tan was his top of his head was just with the tailgate. The blue dog could stand flat-footed and look in the dog box. I mean, they look like. I took that picture in later years. I hunted with Paul one night when he was hunting Dan, and his Walker dog that was so popular. Well,
Hardwood Dan.
I gave him that picture, and he was elated. He said, "Man, I wish I had that little dog today." This is when he had Hardwood Dan. And I pleasure hunted with Dan when I moved to Georgia before anybody ever heard about him. A boy named Terry Bush lives in south of Georgia, south of Macon. He had him. He was about a 2-year-old. And I went along on a cast. I was either guiding a cast or something, or scoring a cast or something. And I went on that cast, and boy, Dan was just dynamite. I called my friends in Knoxville, a couple of them. I said, "Hey, there's a Walker dog I hunted with." I figured back then, I said, it might take $2,000 to get him, but you need to get this dog. Well, little did I know that was a dog that went on to be Dan.
Yeah, two-time Purina Award winner.
A competition.
Absolutely.
Dog.
Well, that's something else I want to talk to you about. But let's go back here then. I asked you about your hunting foundation, how you got started in coon hunting. It's always interesting to me.
Well,
to learn.
Probably when I was less than 10 years old, I would spend summer down at my one Carl in Wabash, Indiana. My Uncle Carl farmed, and I just eat it up. I lived in a rural and just loved the farming. All my cousins lived on farms and wanted to go to the city. I was just the opposite. I wanted to be out there. So I would spend the summer with him. And twice people came and would ask to go coon hunting on his place. And he said, yep, we can go along. He wanted to take me along. And so I was fascinated with it. Then I got an opportunity to go with this tenant farmer. He farmed 340 some acres, and that was my back fence row. I got to how I got to know him is unreal, but nevertheless, he had hounds, great hounds, and they blue ticks. He always liked blue ticks. They look more like English dogs back then, high tan legs, crossbred. But nevertheless, I couldn't get enough of it. And the way I met him is funny in itself. Shetland ponies were popular back then, the 50s. And everybody had Shetland ponies. Well, the people that owned this farm that he was looking after had a boy, Edward, that went to school with us. Edward wanted to fish and hunt like we did, and he couldn't do any of it. He just wasn't his cup of tea. He got a Shetland pony. They put it in the bull stall out there by the barn and kept it up there about a quarter of a mile from my house, right out the back door. Well, Jim, this boy was scared to death to ride the pony anyway. So a friend of mine and I we're 10, 11 years old. I said, look, we drifting around up there. We get up at the barn. There's that pony, and milking's done. The big barn hallway's all empty. And I said, listen, let's get that pony out and ride him up and down that hallway. So we got him out, saddled him up, bridled him off, rode him up. We was having a big time, taking turns riding him up. One time I'm riding him down there, and the barn door opens, and here stands Carl Thomas, the farmer. And he said, okay, boys, put him back. So he said, where do you live? And I said, right over here. So he said, get in the car. So he took me. The other boy took off running. That was with me. He left the barn. And so he took me to my mom's, was home. Of course, my dad's at work, and he drives me in the driveway. Back up. We walk out of the barn, and there he's got these 3-4 hounds, 4 or 5, tied up on a fence with dog boxes and chains. Of course, I'm always talking. I said, you coon hunt? He said, what do you know about coon hunting? I said, well, my uncle, I've coon hunted, and I've been along a few times. He never said another word. We got in the car. He took me to my mom and said, no, he can't be. My mom said, I'll guarantee you he won't be up there anymore. So when he got ready to leave, he said, you want to go coon hunting? I said, yes, sir. He said, you be up to the barn Friday night. I said, I'll be there. He and I become best of friends.
That's awesome.
Just weird. I moved from Knoxville to Macon. This is, I'm a kid, 15 or so, hunted with him for 2-3 years, all over the country up there. Took me to Ohio, where his family was from. So these years go by, I moved to Macon, started hunting with C.W. Eldridge.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The blue tick man.
Yep. I started hunting with C.W. Well, we go hunting, and a few times and get, he showed me places to hunt around Macon, and CW was writing an article then for the blue tick thing. Yeah. And he mentioned something about this guy moved in, Fred Bright, Carl Thomas, my old coon hunting buddy. Now he's up in his 80s, lives in Ohio, outside of Antwerp, Ohio. He writes to CW and says, ask that Fred Bright if he had a dog named Spike. That was the little brindle dog that I coon hunted and everything. CW said he did. Oh, he couldn't believe it. So CW hooked Carl and I up. I called him. I said, Carl, I don't know whether to thank you or to bless you out for getting me into coon hunting. I said, I have spent thousands of dollars on this sport.
Oh,
and he just laughed.
So that's what got it going for you. That
got me going. I then went into school, went to service. I come out of the service. My cousin, John Pulver, who lives in Roanoke, Indiana, my cousin had always coon hunted. And when I got out of the service, he had 2 black and tans. He bought one from L.C. Hayes, a cattle farmer in Ohio at Leafy Oak.
That was the forerunner of the Kenton National, wasn't
before it? Kenton, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was a pre-runner to Kenton.
Right.
Well, John bought this. He told me about it. He bought this black and tan puppy out of a bushel basket, gave $25 registered. And this guy bred registered cattle, really knew his breeding. I talked to him on the phone, never met the gentleman, but real nice guy, obviously knew what he was doing. He line bred. And anyway, John got this male named Spike. He was off of Hawkins. He's almost all Wagner, but everything behind his pedigree with up 4 generations, Wagner this, Wagner that.
Yeah.
So I'm
Hans Wagner, for those of you who haven't heard that name, the guy that pretty much is credited with the creating the type of black and tan that we hunt today.
Absolutely.
Black and tans before Mr. Wagner were pretty much long-eared, the old Gossett and Maple.
Yep.
Maple Hill, was it?
Maple Hill, right.
Yeah, and the Herma Vista Farm. There were different ones around. What was the one at Greencastle? Was that was that?
Let's see. Yeah, Maple Hill, I think.
Well, there was one up around Niles, Michigan, too. When I did the history of Cosner, yeah.
And you're right. Wagner he was a marketing. That was his occupation,
right?
So he knew how to market. Good golly. Yeah. I met him. Went to his house twice.
No, that's awesome. I never met him. No.
Another story, another time. So I met him when he lived at Signal Mountain after he'd moved from Iowa to Tennessee. But anyway, this Spike dog that my cousin got, I got out of the service. I had 3 nights. I went up to visit him. I was single, and I just went to visit him. I think we got 17 coon in 3 nights.
Oh, man.
That was a big deal for us, and
Sure.
I thought these were miracle hounds. I mean, they treat everything they struck, and we caught 3 on the ground in those 3 nights. And I just thought, well, man, what have you got? So I said, well, John, get me a pup. A year later, I got my first registered black and tan. That would have been about 67 or 68.
Mm-hmm.
I'd had grade dogs, but I'd never had a registered dog. And so that got me into that. Then I met other people, Ivan Clark, Ronald Ingram, and we started going to black and tan days. And then things escalated. I got deeper and deeper into it.
Sure. And, I think there's a lot of crossover there from my friend, and I think you were his friend as well, Junior Ralston.
Oh, yeah.
Junior
was a knowledgeable.
Oh, yeah.
He's a encyclopedia.
It was through him that I met people like Owen Bowman and
right.
And the gentleman you just mentioned, who's the other
when you get our age, we forget those names.
Yeah. But it came up a while ago. And it was an interesting story that, Junior went to work for Bill Boatman to kind of run his kennel and help him find some better black and tan dogs around the country.
Right.
But my dad and I were sitting on the front porch there in Beckley, West Virginia one day. I think it's probably after supper, or maybe one of Mom's famous Sunday dinners, and a car pulled up out front, and a guy got out and walked up the walk and said, "Are you Steve Fielder?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he introduced himself as Junior Ralston. Well, I was a voracious reader of all Coonhound materials when I was a kid, I know. And I said, Junior Ralston from Indiana. And I started quoting some of the dogs he had and all this stuff. And he had gone to college there, a small church college there in our town, Appalachian Bible College, and had graduated. And then he went he was just getting ready to go to work for Bill, I think, at that time. So he introduced me to several of those older black and tan breeders, at Black and Tan Days or Autumn Oaks or so, and so forth,
Well, before I forget it, and maybe we'll have to do this again. We've got 2 minutes.
Oh, I hope so.
Hey, I got to meet Hans Wagner, which I was fascinated with. I got to meet Joe Bloodworth. I went to his house and sat down with him. I got to meet H.R. Moore, which used to write all the columns.
He was from Nashville, wasn't he?
Yeah. He lived in Nashville.
I read his column religiously.
Oh, I did too. Good.
These are black and tans, I believe he called it, something like that. Mm-hmm.
And then I got to meet John Plott.
Oh, okay. I
in
did
Maggie
too.
Valley. He was a pleasant gentleman. My cousin, who had the black dog that I told you we started with, unfortunately, at like 3.5, 4 years old, he got hung in a fence. And my cousin still hunted, but that took everything out of him. John worked at International Harvester, where Gaylord Shoy, he handled Laverne Miller's dogs, Miller's Joker, and they hunted. The Harvester had such a big coon hunting following. They had their own coon hunts and their own coon hunt association within International Harvester. They'd hunt 30, 40 grade dogs on a weekend, and John and Gaylord hunted together all the time with Joker and Spike, this young dog. And Gaylord kept telling John, said, you need to put that dog in competition. But my cousin didn't do that. He's laid back and he just hunted. But at any rate, I did enjoy that with John called me and said, don't you live down there in Tennessee, where they have all those Plott dogs? He just heard about them. I said, well, I don't know all that. You can go to a hunt and we might see one or two. But I said, the Plott people are right down here in the mountains below me. I'll do some research. Next thing you know, I was sitting at John Von Plott's in the house. That house he had where the creek run right under the deck.
Plott's Creek.
I mean, how neat was that? Sit there in that rippling water running under the porch.
I was honored, Fred, to be able to. They didn't honor me, but I mean, it was an honor for me to be able to participate in the dedication of a historical marker there at Waynesville on Plott's Creek there.
What about that?
And it says, this is the home of John Plott and all, yada yada, and we had a dedication and all of that there. And I was at AKC at the time. Of course, it wasn't all that far for me to drive from Raleigh over there, but that was a real honor for me. I was, especially since my dad, had involved me at a very young age with that breed. But that's awesome, man. Well, okay, you lived in Indiana, you lived in Tennessee, and you now live in Georgia.
I now live in Georgia.
How do we compare those states for cooning? I think that might be rather obvious to some people.
Yeah.
But
Indiana as a kid, we hunted what we thought was hard. We didn't have good dogs. We be going to school and everything, working. We could basically hunt on weekends. We'd catch 30, 40 coon a year and skin them out and sell them. Get a couple bucks a hide. If we'd have had a decent dog, you could have caught 200 coon. I never drove anywhere away from the house. I could hunt right from the house, and that's the way we hunted. Then in Tennessee, I moved there in 1966. I thought there was coon everywhere. I hadn't traveled anywhere, so I didn't know any better. I thought, man, all this timber. I said, there's going to be this. Well, this will be heaven. I got back into it after school, and the service was I surprised.
Oh,
yeah, East Tennessee. We had a limit of one coon per night, and we got to the point, my friends and I, we wouldn't even shoot a coon. There was plenty of people did. I understand. They thought in that era, the more coon you pour on them, the better they'll be. And not the case. But we got to where we didn't even want to kill a coon. They had not flooded Tellico Lake yet. Loudon Lake, Milton Hill, and they all run together right around Knoxville there. About those lights. Well, Tellico, they had not flooded. So 13 of us guys, this local coon hunters around Oak Ridge, Knoxville, got together. We bought 33 coons from Ohio. And in that era, all illegal, of course, but in that era, I think we gave 20, $30
I would imagine. You
could
probably bought them from Carl Wallen over around Rogersville.
Could have. We could buy coon from Florida and Texas for $5 a piece. We had bought several hundred. We would buy 100 coon and turn loose all over there to have a hunt. Of course, most of them didn't survive. They couldn't get by on the mountain, lack of food, no farming. But we brought down the Ohio coon, 33, and brought them in at night. And we had designated areas. They were just starting to flood Tellico Lake. And we would put them corn out every week. We turned them loose, and the fishermen would see them. Everybody's seeing these coon. So I know some of those genetics are still there. And we had a few 20-pound coon in that batch. Most of them were, 12, 15 pound. But to this day, they say they see more coon there now than has ever been, because there's not many coon hunters there anymore.
That story is almost a carbon copy of the West Virginia situation I was through. Yeah, we started out getting coon from Pennsylvania, and they were really good when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those worked really good. There was a guy named Paul Hunter at Meadville, Pennsylvania. We get coon from him. But then the state shut that down. Then we tried the Florida coon, and they didn't do well at all.
They don't do well.
And then we started getting them out of West Texas, a guy named Brandstetter from Brownwood, Texas, and his wife would bring those coon in. And like you say, we'd order them 100 at a time. We were paying $20 a head. $2,000 for a pickup load of coon.
And we found the Texas coon went to the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So, terrible. Yeah. We could, back then there were 3-hour hunts. And you couldn't keep 200 points for 3 hours.
That's right.
Because you're going to get a ground, and we'd beat our dogs to death and free it in the ground.
Well, that's for sure. I've told people so many times. I remember back when we, put it up for a vote and all, and even made it optional for a while there at UKC that 2 or 3 hour hunt, And I remember John Wick saying, well, if you're a coon hunter, you'd rather hunt 4 hours than 3, But it was all about the guides and having places to go,
Absolutely.
But, I remember very well, those days. And I tell guys now, I said, you could get out there and score a couple hundred, maybe couple coon, right off the bat in 30 minutes, but try to keep that for 3 hours. Or coon or scares, anyway.
I remember the first coon hunt I ever went on. I wasn't old enough to drive, so I had a friend take me. I think I was 14, and I had a grade dog, and I went to Columbus City, Indiana. They still have hunts, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I even on the Facebook back years ago, I contacted somebody to see if they were still active, and I think they said they were. But I went, and they would, how it was then. They'd have 40, 50 grade dogs. They'd have 11 registered dogs.
Yeah.
That was it. And,
Oh, yeah, for sure. It was like that in eastern Ohio. We didn't have any night hunts in southern West Virginia. We knew we didn't have enough coon, and people are not going to drive into those old strip mines and rough old mountains, to coon hunt anyway. But it took a long time before we found. But now, just like you said about Tennessee, they got coon everywhere now.
Yes.
Down there or up there, as the case may be.
1986, I moved from Tennessee. Work brought me down here from Knoxville to Macon, Georgia. And they had adequate coon about everywhere from Macon south. Like Tennessee, from Knoxville, every county you go west is better hunting. So for the weekend, we would drive 2 or 3 hours west towards Nashville. And you could tree a coon, at least tree a coon. And then when we moved to Macon, they had adequate amount of coon. Then I found out for working pups, which I love to do. That was my forte. I put out feeders and had a deer lease, and that got the pups to jump start. That we just hunted. I had never done that. Indiana doesn't have to do that. They got great.
Well, just for my information, how does the hunting around Macon compare to the hunting around Albany there that we hunted on?
Albany's better than Macon. You have more crops down there. The thing we lacked around the Macon area, nobody farms around. You don't have soybeans, corn. You just don't have the food. It's strictly acorn crop or swamp. That's your alternative. And you go farther south, you get into those peanut fields, get into the corn fields. Yeah. And they've got more game. They have this. Yeah. And flatter land. It's nice, flat land, not bad. So it's all been interesting.
Do you ever go back to Indiana to hunt? Or have you?
I just wrote my friend Ivan Clark this week. I texted him. And I said, I was thinking about the hunts. I had to drive up through the mountains this past week. And as I drive through the mountains, my mind's just rattling on hunts I've had. There's hills that go by a little stream and all this. It all comes back to, especially when you can't do it now, that I'm not able to. Yes. Then I reminisce about that. But I text Ivan. I went up there from 1966. I've been there. I probably haven't missed 5 years. I've been going up 50 years with them. I reminisced. I was telling him, and I counted them up. I'd been through 7 pickup trucks. We had been to Autumn Oaks and Black and Tan Days every year for 25, 30 years. And then I think of all the friends I've carried up. My friends would die to go, and I could only take so many, 2 or 3 of us in a truck. And it was always such a pleasure. The Clarks hunted every night. Bill Clark, Ivan Clark, Greasy Long. That's his name, Greasy Long.
Now, is Bill Clark the Englishman?
No.
Okay, it's a different Bill.
He was in southern Indiana. This is Jasper, of course, where Ivan lived. Okay. Bill was Ivan's brother. He has another brother, Jim Clark, who I'm still in touch with. I go up there and rabbit and squirrel hunt with him. And at any rate, I went up last year. We went up last year and squirrel hunted, rabbit hunted with Ivan's son and Ivan and all went along. That's awesome. And they have beagles now. They got into I've had beagles all my life. I've always run beagle hunts. And in an interim, I've always had some kind of a squirrel dog. And I had a taste of competition squirrel hunting. All the registries now, UKC, PKC, all of them had something in squirrel dogs. Right. I got hooked up with ATFA, American Trained Feist Association. A great outfit, really neat. I really enjoyed it. It's a kind of a family thing. They have a deal where you have to have 21 dogs to even get credit for any hunt, any points or anything. And then you have to have so many points and 2 first place in the hunts. And they have a limited number of hunts. They have like 11 or 12 a year.
Okay.
So, it's it takes you a couple, 2 or 3 to finish a dog. And then I luck into a dog. I mean, a giveaway dog, a nuisance dog in a neighborhood. And I go get him, and the guy says it looks like a little greyhound. Says he barks all over the neighborhood. He's a pain in the butt. I said, well, I'll come and get him, because I'm thinking he's the best squirrel. I made him a grand squirrel champion. He's produced many good dogs.
Isn't that amazing?
And not only that, I'm deer hunting in the woods and run into a guy, Linus Hall, a veterinarian here in Gray, Tennessee, or Georgia. Butch Morton owned the sire. Little did I know, we just get talking. And this guy's got a half sister to the male that I've got that I don't even know who he is, who the male's out of. He said, I can tell you the litter he's out of. So I get him registered.
That's awesome.
Isn't it crazy?
That's crazy. Well, yeah, this coonhound world is tree dog world. I should qualify that.
Yes.
It's just truly amazing the way that communication works. And of course, this internet has made things a lot quicker. We used to have to send postcards or make a long distance phone call. I'll call somebody like Fred Moran, the Redbone Man up there in Pennsylvania, or my buddy Lee Kearns down South Carolina. I'd say, is this the store where they got the telephone? Can you go up the holler there and get a hold of Lee Kearns and have him come down and give me a call?
Well, but I don't know how you would keep up with all the people and dealt with in all the breeds, where I'm just trying to keep up with one breed.
Well, that was a blessing, Fred. That was truly a blessing in disguise, I guess. You think about it. I'm raised in southern West Virginia, one of the most least likely places, for someone to develop any kind of a career other than coal mining. But my dad, bless his heart, he was from Middle Tennessee and loved tree dogs and had cur dogs when he was a kid. So we always had the magazines at home. And then, he fell in love with the Plott hound when the first time he heard him run a bear. And so he was interested in that. And I just latched on, and I was his shadow, wherever, when he moved, I was in his way, but he took me everywhere he went, and he let me, and Dad was always teaching. It didn't matter what it was. If it's a way how to latch a gate, or just great. Anything. He was showing me how you need to do this. And he wasn't domineering about it. He would just, come here and let me show you something, And so anyway, I mean, he was my all-time
He was
hero.
a humble man. I remember meeting him at Black and Tan days.
He really
I think he was with you up there, something, and it's just amazing.
He really was, and we go home. Holidays can be tough sometimes when those loved ones are gone, But going to Dad's, Mom's always on Thanksgiving and quite often on Christmas.
Right.
We go in, we wouldn't be there any time, and they'd sit down on the sofa. They just they lived in the same house for 60-some years together. Of course, they had done, they'd remodeled it and all that, but it was still, and the rooms were fairly small. And we'd sit down on the sofa there in a couch in the living room, and he'd come sit down beside me, grab you by the knee and say, let's talk. And I knew that was going to be it was going to be dog talk, or it was going to be telling me about life on the farm on Piney River there in Tennessee when he grew up, and later on, not until he was well up in age did he talk about his military service very much. He was in World War II. For 6 years, all through the whole darn thing, really. But yeah, that heritage, and then to be able though, for the good Lord orders our steps, I believe.
Oh, absolutely.
And
he has it planned out for us. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And you go ahead.
Go ahead. I was amazed at, like, where I grew up in Indiana, you have farm people. And close knit, your neighbors and all that. But there's something about the mountain people. When we moved to Tennessee, you just have to fall in love with it. And we were always, as a coon hunter, there's something about the coon were hard to come by, but we appreciated treeing 1 or 2 coon.
Oh, yeah.
More than my friends treed 10 that night.
Mm-hmm.
And they take it for granted,
Well,
and Stan, my old hunting buddy, we'd come back to Tennessee and we'd be tickled to death to see a coon that week,
Yeah, well, that's the way it was. I would call all the hunters. I knew they'd get tired of hearing me. I would call. I was the secretary of our coon club when I was still in high school, 16 years old. And I'd call them up. Did you do any good last night? Did you tree a coon? And I'd get the story, and like you say, you couldn't have treed 10 being any better than treeing 1 in that old rough country.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I remember I joined the Oak Ridge Coon Club there in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Russell Jackson had a horse farm there, and he let us have our coon club there it had been there for years. And at any rate, just to the point that they were having 11 dogs, 12 dogs. We were down. This was in the 60s. And a load of us went to Black and Tan Days in Oblong, Illinois, our first time. Ed Beard was, I think then was president of the Black and Tan. Anyway, we went up there and we saw what they done. Different members donated for the Plott trophy. Others donated for the Black and Tan trophy. So we came back with a plan, and we got together and said, hey, we're going to buy these coon, turn them loose, assign a guide so we can put them on coon, and we're going to give, if there's one Plott, I always kidded him with a Plott dog, and I like a Plott. That's probably my number 2 choice. but and probably because of that, as I told you, my first little cur was a brindle. Yeah. But I said, a Plott can walk through the barn and win a trophy. I said, they're going to give him a trophy one way or another. And I said, we're going to have a trophy for every breed, even though we've never seen one come to this club. We're going to have a trophy, and that'll bring. We had a hunt, and I got on my phone I told you, I called the Ingrams, I called everybody I knew, and I said, you got to get over. We hunted now in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. We hunted 113 dogs. Oh my
goodness!
And hey, we treed a bunch of coon. Something the coon we turned loose, but that got them jump started, and then they knew you got to have a good kitchen. You got to have the guide. You've done all that stuff.
Oh yeah, deja vu all over again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and my friends, you talk about bear hunting. My friends told me in Tennessee, said, Fred, don't you ever go on a bear hunt. You'll be addicted. It'll cost you a fortune. You'll get rid of your coonhounds. So I never did.
It'll ruin you.
Wanted to.
Well, a lot of the younger hunters now back in the mountains back home are getting into bear hunting instead of coon hunting. And there's a lot of coon now. But I guess it's just more exciting for the young hunters.
Challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more bear now, and there? Oh yeah, and there's a lot. They can drive around, talk on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Run their big
Technology.
4-wheel drives with the big tires and all that stuff, that turn the young people on, and that's cool. I'm
I
all
hear
for
you.
it. Well, listen, Fred, man, we've been at it here an hour and,
Oh, it's been that
8
long.
minutes, but we're just getting started, man.
I hear you.
I wanted to ask you, so, man, there's so many things I want to ask you. What were some of no, I know where I want to go first. You served on the Purina Award Committee for the
Yes.
Black and Tan Coonhound, right?
Yes. Yes.
Did how many years did you do that? Do you remember?
27 years.
27 years. That's amazing, buddy.
Oh,
That's
that was
amazing.
fun. Hey,
Oh.
we got that started and it was fun. We got to go to a lot of fascinating places too.
Yeah.
As a group, and you're always around houndmen. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah, when I first came to UKC in 1983, I got actually, that's when I came to work at AKC full time. I'm getting confused. UKC, United Kennel Club.
Yeah.
I met Fred Miller in 1973 when I came home from the Air Force. I got home in July. We went to Plott Days the first weekend in August in Florida, and he was making his tour around meeting everybody.
Yep.
Okay. So then along the way there, not very long, somebody appointed me breed representative for the Plott Association. So I got to go to Rules Committee, and I did that 2 years. And then I was elected. Then I was elected the president of the Plott Association in 79 and 80. I should have been smarter. And then I had a couple of years of directorship after my presidency. And then that's when I went to work at UKC, and I had to resign with the MPHA because of conflict of interest or whatever. But, that first year that I went to UKC full time, we went out to Grace Summit, Missouri, and had the award for the dog, Dave Blankenship and Harvey French's dog, Rock River Banjo.
Yep.
And I think he was maybe the second Purina Award winner.
Yeah,
I believe
he was one of the early ones. I know.
Yeah. So, man, did I enjoy those banquets and working. We worked, first of all, did you know Louis Pegram at all? Did you meet him with Purina, the older gentleman?
Yes.
Yeah. He's the one that helped develop some of the formulas for dog chow and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and then we had George Cook for many years.
Yep.
And I know you know George and Susan.
Is George still around?
I think he has passed. I think George has passed.
Okay.
And then we had Skip Baumgartner was along a while, and then I don't know where all it went from there. But in those days, just for the listener's sake, real briefly, the dogs competed all year long by going to these Purina Points events, and they were usually like state championships, breed days, autumn oaks, world hunts, bigger hunts. And I was always amazed how these guys really got into that competition and traveled.
They'd get the money they spent to go after that.
Unreal. I would come out of a motel sometimes heading to the airport to jump on a plane and go home. I'd be home in a couple of hours. These guys were facing 1,000 miles of windshield time and be at work the next morning on Monday morning.
That's right.
It was amazing. But those banquets were really top drawer. They really
they were. And they were trying to get not necessarily the dog that won the hunt. You could accumulate, you get seconds and thirds and consistency, and still be in the running.
Yeah,
so it was neat. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it really was. And I think that you guys and UKC was very careful who they selected to serve on that committee, and I just think that that was I knew you probably felt the same way about it. It was an honor to be able to serve on
it was
that
a privilege.
committee.
I thought,
Yeah.
I was like in your position. You've seen more of the dog world than most of us ever dreamed about, but you wasn't able to participate like you'd probably like to. You know, you had to be there and do the administrative end, and yet you got to see it all. But now that's why I realized. I said, I'll bet you have enjoyed the ownership of that fever dog, you and Mark.
Oh, yeah.
Look, you know, now you can appreciate him, and you're old enough to really realize what you have.
Right. You know, for
How
so
blessed
many.
we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about that dancer dog that you had, because he was a standout. Everybody I had heard talk about him told me that he was a really nice hound, and I wanted to let you tell us a little bit about Dancer. Now you had several black and tans down through the years, and know your breeders and pedigrees and all. I think about as well as anybody could know them in the black and tan breed. But then, what year was it that you showed up with Dancer?
Well, we went to the in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm sure you were there. I think you were still there during that era. Johnny Cobb and that crew with the blue tick. Several of them have since been in jail or what.
Oh, I know who you're talking. You're talking about this. Okay, the spare time Spanky dog.
We won't go,
that was in Kentucky. Yes,
we all arrive or drive up, and these guys on. I'll just mention. Don't want to offend anybody, but we all knew. Hey, on Purina's ticket, they arrive in a limousine and come into the banquet. Well, we all drove in our pickup trucks. But the point was, Johnny Cobb, a friend of mine, had called me from Kentucky. I can't think of his name. He said he just hunted with an outstanding little black bitch. And that was Jewel. That was Johnny Cobb's. We know about Johnny Cobb. That was his little female. And so at the banquet, he won the Purina Award that year for the black and tan, the most points. And so at the banquet in Lexington, Kentucky, I walked up to him, and I'll never forget, I introduced myself, and I said, who are you going to breed that female to when you do? Now, I didn't know Johnny, and he said, set him up Ace. Well, I'd been wanting a pup out of Ace. I knew him, knew his pedigree, And he said, I'm going to breed to set him up Ace. I said, I want a puppy. Can I give you a deposit now? Because she had him come in heat. So a year later, I'm in New Orleans at a meeting in business, and he calls and said, I got your pup. He said, I need her picked up by this Friday. I said, oh, Lordy, I'm in New Orleans. I said, let me make a phone call or two. I said, I want the pup. And I wanted a male. And I called my friend in Knoxville. It was about 3.5 hours to Lexington. I said, hey, you need to run up and get a pup for me. She said, fine, I'll get it. So he headed up, met Johnny, and he said, my friend said, I called him and said, what's a pup look like? He said, well, I've seen better looking. And the puppy was 5 weeks old, wormy, 5 weeks. And he wanted it out of there by Friday. And he said, my friend said, hey, that Johnny's kind of an arrogant fella. I said, well, I don't know him really. I'm going on his dog and his bloodlines. Well, anyway, I get my pup. So I got this pup bred to the hill. I got it cleaned up and all that. He's developing a nice looking little pup. Now at this point, I've started something like 60, 65, 70 puppies. That's what I love to do. I'd get them started and let somebody else, I'd find something that I didn't like about them. Out of all that, if there's 5 or 6 that you remember. And I've got them from every stud in the country. I'm not locked in on any bloodline or anything. I just want to hunt. So this pup, I was just, he treated a squirrel, and I'd take him on walks in the woods at 3 months old. At 5 months, oh no, he was 5 months and 2 weeks old. He treated a squirrel one day, and I don't mean barked at it. I'm talking about slobbered, just every breath. And I could see the squirrel. I shot it. It bailed out and went to another tree. Well, I thought he was going to have a heart attack on that second tree. I thought, oh my word! And so I took him home. The next night, I always start them on squirrel by themselves. I hunt dogs by themselves. I don't start them with another dog. And I took him out on the feeders. He treated his first coon that week. He treated 7 coon that week. He never said a word on the ground. He'd just go down in there, hunt. I'd hear him in the leaves, and he'd be going, just fall treed. And I mean, he's stretched up, just like set him up ace, 1 foot on the tree, 1 foot dropped, and I mean, he's hammered. So that was, let's see, he was 7 coon that week. So I started alternating him, leaving him lay up 2 days, and I'd take him again. One night he opened up. From then on, he was wide open. He ended up being a first strike dog. It's amazing. Everything about him was breeding. I mean, I had started enough puppies. I knew that, there wasn't much I'd done except haul them to the woods, teach them to lead. And the rest is either going to come or it's not. But I had never had anything this dominant. Anyway, I was hunting solo. I didn't hunt him at all till he was about 8 months old before I even hunted him with another dog. Then I did just to socialize him. All worked out fine. He was just fine. A lot of the set 'em up ace dogs are touchy. You have to watch them, and they face bark and do. And if he was bumped around, he'd face bark a little bit, not fight. He'd never fight. He'd always back up and give him.
I think to back up now, Ace was out of Sting, wasn't he?
Yes,
and Mr. Riley LaFoon. He used to tickle me talking. He said, "You gotta have they gotta have the sand to stay in there, Steve." They got. He liked a little bit of that.
But well, they said that they always told me. I never got to hunt with Ace, but several have told me you could turn him loose, and they all said he's running a deer. Said the other 3 are broken. They won't say a word. And they said, you could walk or drive around. They said they don't know what he's running, but he ends up treed on a coon. They said he's just down. Well, the funny thing with Dancer that I always thought, with all the other pups I started, I never trash broke him. I never had to have a shock and collar on him. I'd have guys, and when he trees, a dog that trees like that usually will tree anything. I mean, in a heartbeat, they're opossum, a cat, or whatever you name. And I've had guys on a cast, they'd go down there and they'd strike tree, all 3 of their dogs. They said, "Boy, you've got him." We'd go down the tree and there'd be a possum. They said, "Man, you got your dog broke on." I said, I've never said a word in his life to him. I'm about 11, 12, 13, 14 months old. I said, I've never said a word to him. So one day I take him, he was 11 months old. I took him to his first hunt, a local hunt down there in Macon. He won the show, had 2-3 dogs against him. Wasn't much, small show. He won best of show, put him in the hunt. He treed 3 coon. I won the hunt at first place in that. I put him in, I think 12 hunts. He won 10 casts. On one of those hunts, we didn't tree a coon. On the other, he got beat. I put him a total something like 15 hunts. He get just grand out loud, like a piece of cake. He was not a show dog, but he wasn't bad. And I won the Hall of Fame. He's never beat on the bench. I put him 5, 6, 7, 8 times or something. He won
I saw pictures of him. He was a good looking hound, big proud
hound.
He
wasn't that outstanding show dog, but he just liked the scorecard. He didn't beat himself.
Yeah.
And he was such a pleasure to show to people. He's not going to make mistakes. He's not going to leave a tree. If he opens on a tree, dogs that babble, he's not going to give a whimper. And when he opens, he's going to tree it. No, that's it.
Yeah.
Up until he was about 17 months old, when the rut was on, he'd tree once or twice a night wrong. But he wasn't moving, and the dog couldn't. No such thing as a dog pulling him. He would be wrong during the rut. It's the only time it screw him up. Then when he got about 19, 20 months old, that was over. He quit. He just a pleasure. He was a joy. And to this day, he's set in my face his best producing son.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
He's a very popular black and tan stud dog.
He said he produced a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
He's produced a slew of them. So I was privileged to get him late in life like you know, and I knew what to do with him and knew how to handle him. I knew it wasn't me because I tried 4 or 5 others after him, and some of his pups, they didn't do like he did. You know, some of them were pretty good, but they didn't do like he did. So,
well, you know, I was faced with that, knowing my age and my limitations, both geographically, being way down here in Florida, and all. When I had the opportunity to get that pup from Bill Scheninger, the fever pup, and I had bred his mother. You know, I raised her right here in Florida out of the old hoss dog that I had that I traveled all over the country with. Closest estimate I can make, that dog traveled nearly 200,000 miles with me. All over the country, and I could name the states that he hunted in, but he's put in very few night hunts. He did qualify a couple of times for the world hunt and that sort of thing. But anyway, now I got this pup here I call Ghost. And he's out of fever, and doggone that rascal. We thought we'd just get a little plot and just have one, you know, just for a family tradition. And doggone, he acts like he wants to be a dog. He's a natural tree. Yeah, he's a natural tree dog. And it showed me that out in Arkansas. So I don't know whether I'm going to be able to talk my partner into taking him and finishing. Mark says he's getting too old for this, but you know, so that's a dilemma right there, you know. But fellas, if you're able to go hunt and get up off that couch and go, because there's going to be a day when you're going to want to, but you just can't do it. You know it.
Yep. That age catches up with us.
That's for sure. Well, would you rank Dancer as your all-time favorite that you've owned or not?
It depends. You know how they are, Steve. I've often thought of that. I've had 5 or 6 dogs that I really like, for just nice dogs. And one of my favorites was a dog named Rowdy. I had him till he was 6, and my friend was hunting him on Halloween night when I got him run over. But anyway, if you're going to take a scorecard, Dancer's probably head and shoulders. But just night in, night out hunting, there's 2 or 3 others. I got a female from Ivan Clark named Mandy, outstanding. Had a female I bought from Jimmy up in Tennessee. When I got Rowdy killed, I bought it. The only dog I ever bought, a coon dog. She's already a coon dog when I bought her. Well, Mandy was too. Take that back. But those 2, they were really good females. I got to hunt with who bought Eads Little Bruiser, Lee's son. Anyway, in North Carolina, I hunted with him one night. He had the Bruiser dog, and I had that female boy. She was nice. I liked her. But Dancer and Rowdy and the little cur dog.
The one that I hunted with.
She was a freak of nature. You know, quarter poodle, quarter spot cocker spaniel, and off of a Grand Night champion off of Smoky River Diamond Gym. And I talked to Warren Hausler, met him at at the Purina Awards and talked to him. He said he bred bukus of cur dogs to a Diamond Jim and got all kinds of game dogs for big game.
Yeah.
And I said, well, this thing I've got's a freak. I said, she could out-track most of the hounds. Was it? Amazing.
It is. And those superstars come along, you know.
Oh, hey, I found the more I've learned and the deeper I got into genetics, I find out how little I knew.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't add
Exactly.
up. It does not add up.
It doesn't. And, you know, one of the terms that you hear bannered around an awful lot is this is a proven cross. It's a proven cross. Well, I've seen the very same cross made and the dogs not be one iota like that first litter.
Absolutely. That doesn't hold a candle of the idea of making a cross 3 or 4 times. Those pups aren't the same.
No,
they're not.
They definitely aren't. They definitely aren't.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the little fever dog that we've had, he's somewhat like, you know, the little dog is just accurate. That's, you know, I call him ambush or whatever you want to call him. But he gets in those mountains and finds a raccoon and parks under it. That's been his strength.
Yep.
And, you know, and God puts that in there. The genetics are there. You know, back in the day when my dad was living and we were breeding for our own purposes, basically, and we did that family breeding and line breeding and believed in it. We really did. And it produces uniformity in your dogs. It produces predictability. You got to know about what they're going to look like, about how they're going to act. Yep. We had one named Rip. He would sit from his doghouse and hold 1 foot up in the air, and his pups would do the same thing. Now, you know, it's just crazy. But yeah, it is a hit and miss thing, the very best you can do. But that I've quoted him many times on this podcast. Lance Hutton from Virginia, a bear hunter, coon hunter. Lance is still living, thank goodness. He had a hunting accident a few years ago and lost a hand in the process. But Lance had a couple degrees from Virginia Tech in animal husbandry and genetics and whatnot. And he said, you family breed to establish your line breed. Then you outcross to get your outstanding individuals. Friends, that concluded our interview for this week with Fred Bright, longtime friend, real hunter, a real class gentleman that I've enjoyed knowing for many years. And we're going to get Fred back on the podcast because we've got a lot of trees to shine, so to speak. And Fred's an excellent pup trainer, has trained many, many coonhound pups over the years. And I want to pick his brain about some of his training techniques and about some of the pitfalls and so forth that we can avoid. But anyway, I want to deeply thank Fred Bright for coming on the podcast. I also want to thank each of you who came by the Full Cry booth at the Grand American. If you came by and renewed your subscription or bought a new subscription to Full Cry, you're doing a lot to promote the sport of coon hunting nationally. And it was very much appreciated. I know I can speak for Danny Doobie, the editor, and for Jason, her husband, and that, you know, was with us there at the booth. And we just enjoyed so much seeing each of you that came by and stopped and talked. I think those of you who picked up a copy of my book, Going to the Dogs, A Coon Hunter's Journey, I hope that you enjoy that and pass it on to other members of your family. Those are still available at stevefielderbooks.com, or you can contact me on social media, stephen.f.fielder. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We want to once again wish everyone out there in the sound of my voice a happy New Year.